and welcome to my video on how to put fret lines on a fretless bass guitar. This is my bass collection, 4-string fretless bass, and I'll show you in a moment. Get this video a bit closer. You can see there I've now got these fret lines on the fretboard. I'm pretty pleased with that. It's took me several weeks to do that and work out the best way to do it, so I'd like to show you how I did it. I'd like to share with you some of the things I might do differently if I did it again. So the next step is I will show you now how I cut the slots in the fretboard, which is the first step. Here we go. Hello and welcome to my workshop. What I'd like to show you now is the sequence and the method which I use to actually machine the slots into the fretboard of my fretless bass. This is just a practice piece. This is just a plastic laminate strip which I use just to practice on first. Always to be recommended before you get stuck into your precious guitar. So this is what I did, and I just recreated this here so that I can show you and just go over the steps that I used. So this is how I did it. I put on this masking tape, standard masking tape, onto the fretboard face. I marked off the fret lines here. This is coming down from the octave. See, I've used this before, and marking the frets here just like that. Once I've got the marks, I can then machine it. I used a Makita miter saw with a ultra fine thin blade. This is a 1.4mm thin blade. So here we see the slots. I think the slots are about 2mm deep. Not critical. I just cut straight across. In the end, I just decided it. Although there's a radius on the face of the fretless bass, there's a radius on the face of the fretboard of most basses. I just decided to cut straight across. I didn't bother with the radius. I didn't see there's any particular problem with that. It turned out fine for me. The next is to fill it with this is a 2-part wood filler. This sets very hard, very quickly. You just mix it. It's a 2-part mix. Mix it, 2-part mix, and just press it with a knife. Or just a piece of metal straight into the slots, and there you have it. It looks as good as that. The next, and this is really neat. This worked really well for me with the masking tape on the fretboard. You don't have to be too careful about getting this wood fill onto the fretboard. Very neatly, the masking tape being pulled off, and I just pulled this off in sections. You see, this is the tape just pulls away cleanly, and actually giving you a clean edge along the cut line, which is very neat. Which means that you don't have to do too much sanding back, and it also means that you're left with a pretty good straight line on either side of your cut line. Here's the next stage. After the wood filler is cured. I did this actually in about 10 minutes after the wood filler cured. I would recommend leaving the wood filler for longer than that, sort of like overnight, but actually this wood filler sets hard very fast. And just sand this down. I sanded it down with an 80 grade paper. That's really very aggressive 80 grade, but you can see the finish I got is pretty good. That's how I did my guitar fretboard. I think I would have gone for a finer grade, maybe a 120 instead of an 80, but actually to be honest, that's all I had at the time, and I tried it on one part. It seemed to work well. Main thing is to actually mount your sanding paper on a flat wooden batten, so that, and just lay it along the fretboard in that axis, not in that axis, because that's the radius goes that way, but in that axis, so that as you rub away there, you've actually got you're actually generating a flat surface along that axis. The flat surface along that axis worked very well for me. This took probably 2 minutes, maybe less, so very, very quick. And then you use a finer grinding pad, and then a finer grinding pad, and then the next grade of pad, until you get the finish that you want. This is plastic, so this looks a little bit rough and abraded, but that's what happens with the ebony fretboard. As you grind it back with a finer and finer polishing pad, you find you get quite a nice satin finish, even at this stage, without any oiling or finishing. So there we are. That's the method that I used. If I were to do it again, I'd use the same method. It worked pretty well for me. But on to a little bit more detail of how I did the edge markers on the fretboard, which was for me a bit more tricky, and for me I think I would do that differently. But on to the next method. Well, I'm at a stage now where I'm inserting these side markers, and these little guys are made of abalone. Abalone is a shell. It looks like a little bit like mother of pearl. They come like this. You can buy a pack of 100. It's my pack of 100 from China, and they'll set you back about £6 or £7. So really excellent value for money. What I've done here is I just positioned some of these, and I've already installed one just to see how I'm going to do it. So here we are. This is between the 2nd and 3rd fret, 4th and 5th fret, 6th and 7th fret, 8th and 9th. This is the octave marker. Just plan to put 2 there either side of the fret, just as you have in an acoustic guitar. This octave plus 3, octave plus 5, octave plus 7, and so on, and up to the 2nd octave marker. So I've already done one of these, which is this one. Just here we are, just here. Very usefully, these shells are punched out, and they are very, very close to 3mm. I measure them at 3.01 millimeter, or just under. That's minus 0.1, less than 3. So they're precision made. The face looks very similar to mother of pearl, so it's quite a saving if you want an alternative. I'm a bit concerned now, because originally I was going to try and put them like midway down on the edge of the fingerboard, but I realised it's going to be just too close to the top edge, so I've opted to put them in at the interface between the fretboard and the neck. You can see I'm already in trouble here, because the drill hasn't held that position, even though I marked it with a centre punch. The drill hasn't followed that centre punch mark, and it's wandered, so it's down below where I want it to be. So now I'm in trouble. Now I'm not sure what to do now. Got that first one in. That's okay, they went in fine. It's just punched in. I thought I was going to have to use like a super glue, but you just tap it in. Make sure you tap it in with some sort of soft material between this and the hammer, so you don't damage the surface. But that's gone in nice. It's a really nice tight fit. So that's good, but I just out of position there, and I'm wondering what to do, whether I'm just going to put up with the fact that these aren't quite going to all be in line, or whether I'm going to have to make some sort of jig for it, which is quite tricky. It's a little bit beyond my workshop capability. So that's as far as I've got. I'm just going to have to think about that before I get back and show you the finished product. Hello again, welcome back to my workshop. I'm just going to show you what is pretty much the finished result on my fretless guitar neck. These abalone side markers that I decided to put in, they've worked out really well. Abalone is a seashell, and I'm not quite sure how they make them, but you can buy these. It's a 3mm side marker. I've got 100 for a pack of 100 for £6. Good value for money. It has all the look of being mother of pearl, but it's not mother of pearl. And even though I polished the side face, I thought I might lose that sheen, but it's kept its sheen quite well. It hasn't spoilt it, so I'm quite pleased with that. The other thing with these side markers is, as I said before, previous part of this video, I tried to get them on the interface between the fretboard and the neck. Because of the hardness of different hardnesses of the wood, I found that it just pushed the drill point over. You see this is way off that interface mark, so I ended up with this, but fortunately luckily it's been very consistent all the way along, and I've managed to match them pretty well. It's like there's one or two right at the beginning here, one or two that's slightly higher, but it looks pretty good. It looks pretty consistent. That's not going to worry me. The other thing that I found was, it's got the cable caught there. When I did my first cut, this cut was with a 1.4mm wide miter saw. You see that the this fretboard is a radius fretboard. Some fretboards are flat. This is a radius fretboard. I did think quite a lot about this, and I decided I just cut straight across, not worry about the radius. I think I've seen some videos where people are cutting it by hand and they're really worried about the radius, but I just cut straight across, and it seemed to work quite well. And you fill it in, and then you polish it back, and then the polishing pad follows that radius quite well, so there's no problem at all. The other thing I did, this is where I started off. This looks a bit of a mess. I need to tidy up a bit. I actually cut too deep. I cut almost into the wood neck here. Disaster, but that's just going to have to stay like that. Pulled it back a bit, pulled it back a bit more, and now it's pretty consistent after that. Then I decided afterwards that what I could have done is to just cut straight across like that with a miter saw. What you can do, I did try an experiment, you can just pull this cut down here with a hacksaw by hand, and bring that cut just at the edge down to this neck. That would have given me a better location for the fret marker, and maybe done away with the need for these side markers. It's too late now. What I've done it, but I think that could have been quite neat to do that. So there we are, and you can see these. This is the original position of the original side markers. You see they're very different to where my fret marker is, but it's partly down to the style of playing. I checked it out all with a digital tuner. These fret markers are just for a guide, and it really depends on your style of playing as to you get used to where to put your finger, whether you put your finger on in the middle of that or just behind it. In the end, it's just a reference point. It doesn't really have to be that accurate, although it has to look right. It has to give you a good guide. See, these original side markers, when I filled them in, I'm just going to have to ink them in with black ink again as they've started to show, because I polished the edge, and that's taken some of the that black dye off. Hello, welcome back to my workshop, and welcome back to my video on how to put fret lines into a fretless bass guitar. This is the neck from my fretless bass. Just showing you the finish I've got. This is finished now. I finished the neck before I put it onto the body. Supplied as standard. This neck has a lacquered finish, and I took the lacquered finish off using a 120 grit paper, which is fairly aggressive, but I was able to get out some marks and dings into the back of the neck, and that neck looks pretty good now. I managed to get all those marks out. What I used after that was I used this True Oil Beretta. It's a gunstock finish. It's actually made in the USA, but it is also distributed through Amazon. I can't remember whether I got that through Amazon UK or Amazon Spain, but you'll look it up on the internet and you'll find out where you can get it from. You apply it I applied it using a kitchen paper towel, folded several times, and just apply very thin coats, and allow 2 or 3 hours between coats. I applied 3 coats, allow 4 hours drying after the final coat, and I just polished it back using a 2400 grade polishing pad. What you're seeing there is the actual finish that I've got, which is quite a nice finish. It's not, although it's catching it in the light, it's not a high true gloss. It's a slight satin sheen to it, but it looks good. It feels good. Pretty pleased with that. Now, to show you these are the edge markers that I put in. These are the abalone. This is like a white shell. Looks like mother of pearl, but much cheaper. These I'm quite pleased with those. They look quite good. They give an additional guide to the fret lines. They actually go in between the fret lines, which is like same as an acoustic guitar, same as a fretted bass guitar. What I decided to do was actually oil the fingerboard as well. The fingerboard is ebony, but I wanted to get the filler. I wanted to seal it off so that it didn't absorb finger sweat and dirt and grime. So I wanted to use the oil as a sealant specifically for the filler. And of course I had to do the fretboard as well. The ebony started off as a sort of dark brown. It's now gone black, which is a bit of a surprise at first, but actually I'm getting used to it, and I think I'm quite liking it. You see, it's I put 3 coats of the True Oil on the fretboard, and then polished it back again with a 2400 grade paper, and it's come up. It looks gloss, but I was looking for a satin finish. It is a satin finish. It's difficult to show in the lights here. I'm quite pleased with that. I think I would, if I was doing it again, I'd do the same thing again. So, but it looks good. What I was after was a contrast between the ebony fingerboard and the filler. I think I've got that. You don't too much of a contrast. It's like a mid to dark brown against the black. I think if you're playing in a darkened room or a hall with very low lighting, you'd be able to see that sort of contrast. So I'm pretty pleased with that. It's done really what I wanted to do. Next is to fit the neck into the body. So here is the finished, assembled bass collection, fret lined, fretless 4-string bass guitar, and I'm pretty pleased with the result. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up at the bottom of the page. If you have any comments or any questions, please leave me a message. And now finally, my son James will be using this same bass guitar and playing us out with some harmonic arpeggios. Enjoy!